It remains unclear why Sean Diddy Combs was transferred to the Central New York Correctional Facility. At one point, an officer forcefully grabbed him by the neck and dropped his semi-conscious body onto an examination table.
I will say I do find it crazy that this guy can't even escape the paparazzi from prison. The video was likely taken by an inmate on a phone that was smuggled into the prison and then sold to TMZ, and it makes me wonder how much the inmate got paid because he probably sacrificed his phone in order for the world to see this video.
People saw in that video. And I know that they're trying to keep a different narrative, but if you've seen that video, you're not going to forget that video.
Yeah, no, you're not going to forget that video. He's a person, but what they're saying is the video didn't happen because of a bad freak-off.
I don't think that the jurors are going to be able to separate that video from their mind.
Newly surfaced footage from one of the United States' most feared federal detention centers reveals a far darker reality of Diddy's life behind bars than anyone could have anticipated. In the video, the man once synonymous with private jets, luxury estates, and chart-topping hits looks almost unrecognizable. The designer suits and diamond chains are gone, replaced by a faded prison jumpsuit, hollow eyes, and the slow, cautious movements of someone learning firsthand what survival in confinement truly means. This isn't merely a celebrity downfall. It's a stark depiction of how one of hip-hop's most powerful figures was stripped of wealth, influence, and freedom. A man who once commanded empires is now struggling to breathe inside concrete walls. Just over a year earlier, in September 2024, Diddy was arrested at Miami International Airport during what authorities described as an attempted escape. Federal agents swarmed his private jet moments before takeoff, while shocked onlookers captured the chaos on their phones.
Agents took Sean Diddy Combs into custody. He's seen in this video entering the Park Hyatt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan with others when agents from Homeland Security Investigations approach and separate him. They place Combs under arrest and lead him out the front door in handcuffs. His lawyer said Combs had come to New York 2 weeks earlier with the intention of turning himself in. He did not expect the agents to be waiting at his hotel last Monday night.
Within hours, he was moved north, not to a luxury holding area or discreet rehabilitation center, but to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, widely known as MDC. Federal judges have described the facility as barbaric and unfit for human habitation. For a man who once dominated the music industry, this marked a brutal turning point, from a $48 million Miami Beach mansion to a cell barely large enough to turn around in. MDC Brooklyn, notorious for housing the likes of R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, Sam Bankman-Fried, Martin Shkreli, and Jeffrey Epstein, is a grim convergence point for the country's most infamous criminal cases, a volatile mix of fraudsters, gang members, and fallen celebrities. Designed in the early 1990s for roughly 1,000 inmates, it now holds nearly 1,400, with overcrowded corridors, flickering lights, broken plumbing, and failing ventilation. By September 2024, the Federal Bureau of Prisons had stopped assigning sentenced inmates to MDC, effectively admitting it was too dysfunctional to operate safely. Yet this is where Diddy was placed.
Got video of him at Fort Dix reporting for work in the library.
This was the chapel, and this is the media library in the chapel, which is where Diddy's currently working. He's working in a Life Connections program, which is an 18-month program that helps rehab people, get them closer to spirituality, to charity groups, and with that, it will shorten his sentence. It does sound like he used maybe possibly some connections to get a better job.
Upon arrival, Diddy was thrust into an environment built to dismantle people physically and mentally. The special housing unit, known as the box, meant he spent 23 hours a day in a concrete cell measuring roughly 8 by 10 feet, with a steel bunk, a thin mattress, a gray blanket, and a towel instead of a pillow. The fluorescent light never shut off, blurring day and night, while the cold seeped into his bones. Every step outside his cell required full restraints, handcuffs, ankle shackles, and a waist chain. Meals were tasteless and lukewarm, communication was limited, and legal calls were monitored. Even brief moments of reprieve, like 1 hour of rooftop recreation, offered no sun, no fresh air, only a gray sky overhead, a constant reminder of freedom lost. Within 48 hours, Diddy made no requests, no complaints, quietly trying to survive as the relentless noise, cold, and light began to distort time and erode his mind.
And they say that the conditions are not up to scratch.
What makes it worse is the food. Mostly everything is stale food, is old food that's donated, that they wrap up or they cook for you. It's full of not roaches and the giant cockroaches. You know, you can smell the mold, you can smell the rot, you can smell the jail that it needs to be rebuilt. It needs help. I don't think anyone should be in that particular jail. You're in prison and you're serving time, or you're waiting, to go to court or to go to trial or whatever it is, does not mean that you're not a human being. Just like what's going on with Diddy, he still deserves to be treated as a human.
MDC Brooklyn has a long history of chaos and neglect, power failures, flooding, mold, infestations, overcrowding, and repeated violence. Between 2023 and 2025, at least 4 inmates died from suicide or assaults, while MS-13 members were caught stabbing an inmate 44 times. Guards privately admit that violence and tension are constant, with lockdowns and staff shortages failing to prevent harm. For Diddy, fame became a liability. By October 2024, just over a month into his incarceration, he faced a life-threatening situation when an inmate attempted to stab him over a trivial dispute. Fellow inmate Raymond Castillo intervened, preventing bloodshed, but the incident sent a chilling message: inside MDC, no one is untouchable. His legal team demanded relocation, but the Bureau of Prisons assured the court he was safe.
So we're here at MDC. All we hear are the inmates banging on the windows to get our attention. And when they see that we're here, they bang louder. And we're not getting anything from the Bureau of Prisons. They're not telling us anything.
As public scrutiny increased, protests, congressional inquiries, media coverage, MDC's reputation as a violent and unsafe facility continued to grow. Finally, after 15 months, Diddy was quietly transferred to Fort Dix Federal Correctional Institution in New Jersey, a low-security facility roughly 50 miles from Philadelphia. He entered the Residential Drug Abuse Program, RDAP, a therapeutic program with structure and reduced sentence opportunities, and was assigned to assist in the chapel's media library. From penthouses to VHS tapes, luxury to quiet labor, Diddy's journey reflects a dramatic fall from privilege into a world designed to test every facet of survival, physically, mentally, and emotionally.
There was an MS-13 stabbing while I was at Buckingham Correctional Center, and I don't know what the issue was, but they got word from the street that they had to take care of one of their own, that he was out of line, so they hit him up on the yard, they dropped the knife, and they all wandered off. So the guy kind of just sat out there on the yard, and we had thought he got jumped because we weren't really paying attention, and then we realized he's not walking too well, something's really wrong. He made it all the way up the stairs, made it back to his pod, and just fell out on the floor and started bleeding out from his gut where he had stuffed his shirt, so he was trying to hide in the blood. So they had this big investigation, but they could never prove what happened, and it's really crazy because they had dropped the knife after they stabbed him so they wouldn't get caught with it.
Even correctional officers privately admit that violence at MDC never ceases. Lockdowns are frequent but ineffective, and some areas go unmonitored for hours. Overcrowding fuels tension, creating a constant threat of conflict. Defense attorneys now argue that the conditions themselves constitute extra punishment. As one lawyer told the New York Times, it's punishment stacked on punishment. Prosecutors rarely contest such claims because the reality inside MDC speaks for itself. Yet perhaps the most haunting element isn't the violence, it's the silence. When inmates die, the official statements are cold and sterile: an incident occurred. An investigation is underway. No names. No accountability. Despite the Bureau of Prisons claiming improvements, public defenders report that mold still grows, cells still flood, and screams continue to echo through the corridors. For Diddy, isolated for his own protection, every sound beyond his cell door was a potential threat. Fame, once his shield, had become a liability. Violence, intimidation, and constant uncertainty became his new normal.
So now we're actually living with him. So now we're studying him and analyzing him in person. So I feel like we all got to recognize with time was that he's human, and he's like one of us. He's one of us, and I feel like he handled himself with humility.
By October 2024, just over a month into his incarceration, Diddy faced a terrifying ordeal. Reports, including accounts from longtime friend and producer Charlie Finney, reveal that one night he awoke to find an inmate looming over him, a makeshift shiv inches from his throat. Diddy stayed calm, eerily composed, while the threat loomed. Raymond Castillo, another inmate, intervened just in time, preventing harm. The attack wasn't personal, it was a demonstration of power within prison culture. Defense attorney Brian Steele later explained that Diddy's fame made him a target. He's a walking headline. Whether called an assassination attempt or intimidation, the incident forced a new reality. Survival inside MDC required constant vigilance. The Bureau of Prisons downplayed the event. An altercation occurred. No injuries. TMZ later confirmed the key details. Yet for Diddy, the message was undeniable: inside MDC, status, money, or influence offers no protection.
And, he's not going to think solitary confinement, in a prison, let alone one like MDC Brooklyn, which, has been written about extensively, where federal judges have refused to put their clients in there, or at least put the Federal Bureau of Prisons on notice that the place is, infestated with rodents, that there is crime, that there are weapons, that there is drugs, that there's violence, and that it's just a very difficult place.
Legal filings soon reflected the danger. Brian Steele bluntly warned, "My client's life is in danger." He described MDC as violent, chaotic, and incapable of protecting high-profile inmates. Judges began factoring the facility's conditions into sentencing, with some noting that reduced sentences had become routine because confinement itself was punishment. Civil rights groups demanded investigations, former inmates came forward with damning testimony, and congressional attempts to inspect the prison were blocked. When Congressman Dan Goldman attempted a visit in March 2025, he was denied entry, publicly asking, "What are they hiding?" The clip of his denied visit went viral, fueling public outrage and protests outside MDC. Pressure mounted. Supporters, former inmates, and activists rallied, demanding reform. By mid-2025, even prosecutors acknowledged that keeping Diddy at MDC posed risks.
Local congressional Democrats entered the gate to the Metropolitan Detention Center. A masked agent locked it behind them. He ignored calls to identify himself and then proceeded to lock the front door of the federal jail. It effectively left Congressman Dan Goldman, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, and Congressman Adriano Espaillat
that are at the front door
stuck in a small yard for a period of time.
We've heard is that the conditions here are incredibly horrendous, but also that people are not gaining access to lawyers.
This is the stuff of authoritarian fascist governments, where they hide people based on fictional reasons and prevent any oversight and accountability.
After 15 months of confinement, the Bureau of Prisons finally acted quietly and without fanfare. Before dawn, Diddy was shackled, his belongings stuffed into a duffel bag, and escorted to a transport van. His destination, Fort Dix Federal Correctional Institution in New Jersey, a low-security facility roughly 50 miles from Philadelphia. Fort Dix, a former military base, houses over 4,000 inmates, with social hierarchies forming quickly. Reputation matters, and Diddy entered an unfamiliar world where privilege no longer protected him. He was enrolled in the Residential Drug Abuse Program, RDAP, a structured program offering therapy, routines, and the possibility of sentence reduction. Assigned to assist in the chapel's media library, he went from luxury penthouses to quiet work among old VHS tapes and worn religious texts, a humbling, almost poetic reminder of how far he had fallen.
Have not heard he's actually been transferred from MDC to his choice prison. This is Fort Dix. This is located in New Jersey. This is where he actually wanted to go. However, the Judge Samaranian, was kind of against it. He did not approve it. However, I guess the prison board overruled Judge Samaranian, and Diddy's currently in Fort Dix. Now, what's interesting about this is there are people who have been saying negative things about Combs. You guys already know who I'm talking about. Well, that individual had the audacity to focus on Sean Diddy Combs. This was a fight that he allegedly had while he was in prison, where a knife was allegedly held to his neck. That's what the person is reporting about today. However, breaking news, he just got released. Or, yeah, he released, you could say that. Got released from MDC, and he's currently in Fort Dix. This is actually great news for Sean Diddy Combs. To be honest, it's kind of like a prison resort kind of prison. So this is actually a good thing for him. However, we know how people...
Diddy's journey from opulence to incarceration reflects a dramatic transformation. From commanding stages in boardrooms to navigating life inside MDC and Fort Dix, he has been forced to confront the fragility of freedom. At MDC, he faced psychological warfare, isolation, threats, and violence. At Fort Dix, he found structure, therapy, and relative safety, but the shadow of his past life and the memories of Brooklyn's hellish prison remain. The story of Sean Diddy Combs' incarceration is more than a celebrity downfall. It is a stark illustration of how wealth and fame provide no immunity against the raw, unrelenting realities of America's federal prison system. It is a tale of survival, resilience, and the sobering reminder that even the untouchable can be brought to the floor.
Got video of him at Fort Dix reporting for work in the library.
This was the chapel, and this is the media library in the chapel, which is where Diddy's currently working. He's working in a Life Connections program, which is an 18-month program that helps rehab people, get them closer to spirituality, to charity groups, and with that, it will shorten his sentence. It does sound like he used maybe possibly some connections to get a better job.
Then, in early November 2025, the first piece of leaked footage finally surfaced. The clip was short, less than a minute, but it exploded across the internet almost instantly. In the video, Diddy could be seen inside the chapel library, dressed in standard-issue prison khakis. He removed his blue jacket, leaned forward to exchange a few quiet words with another inmate, slipped the jacket back on, and walked toward the exit with a faint, nearly imperceptible smile. There was no sound, just the grainy low hum typical of surveillance cameras. Yet even without audio, the images conveyed a depth far beyond what casual observers might notice. To the average viewer, the moment seemed calm. It appeared as though Diddy, humbled by incarceration, was slowly adjusting to his new reality. To some, it looked almost peaceful. But to those who truly understand prison life, that smile told an entirely different story. It seemed practiced. The serenity appeared manufactured. A former Fort Dix inmate who saw the clip summarized it bluntly: "In prison, you learn to smile so others don't sense fear." That smile wasn't a sign of peace, it was survival. The Bureau of Prisons, however, reacted with fury rather than curiosity. Officials at Fort Dix released a formal statement declaring that they had neither authorized nor produced the video, and that the leak was under active investigation. Behind closed doors, staff scrambled to determine who had smuggled it out. Meanwhile, while the outside world debated whether the clip signified strength or surrender, life inside Fort Dix continued, and very quickly, began to unravel. Within weeks of Diddy's transfer, rumors of disciplinary violations began to circulate. The first whispers concerned alcohol possession, a classic prison contraband issue. Inmates alleged that Diddy had been caught with a small quantity of Pruno, the homemade alcohol brewed from fermented fruit and sugar. TMZ immediately seized on the story. His publicist, Judah Angelmeyer, denied the claims, calling them malicious gossip, insisting that Diddy remained focused on rehabilitation rather than indulgence. But the rumors did not stop there. Days later, another report surfaced, this one involving an unauthorized phone call. Prison records later confirmed the incident. Diddy had placed a 3-person call, a serious violation under Bureau of Prisons regulations. He claimed the call was related to legal discussions with his attorneys concerning a public statement for the New York Times. Officials disagreed, asserting that the call violated communication security protocols, a breach that carries automatic punishment. The consequences were immediate and severe. Diddy lost 90 days of phone privileges. He lost 90 days of commissary access. Internal recommendations suggested extending his incarceration by nearly a month. The ruling was officially recorded on November 4, 2025, his 56th birthday. For most, birthdays are a time of celebration. For Diddy, it was a stark reminder that inside those walls, every decision, however small, carried weighty consequences. To the public, the leaked footage may have seemed innocuous, even hopeful. To the Bureau of Prisons, it was an embarrassment. To Diddy himself, it became a burden. Behind that faint, controlled smile was a man under intensified scrutiny. Every movement monitored. Every rumor magnified. Every misstep transformed into another headline. What had once been a quiet assignment in the chapel library now felt like a constant spotlight. Fort Dix was cleaner than MDC Brooklyn, yes, but the pressure inside remained suffocating. A former inmate explained, Fort Dix isn't as brutal as Brooklyn. It's polite about breaking you. The routine. The surveillance. The constant judgment. It's all designed to wear you down slowly, piece by piece, until even your silence can be read as guilt. That smile in the leaked footage became symbolic. It represented a man striving to show the world he was okay, even as the system worked to prove he was not. Those few seconds, walking through a hallway, jacket on, faint grin, revealed a truth few were prepared to face. The cameras could only capture so much. What lay ahead for Diddy, the rumors, the punishments, the slow unraveling of a man who had already lost almost everything, remained unseen. The footage was intended to depict peace. Instead, it exposed the illusion. For him, freedom was no longer a forthcoming chapter, it had already been erased. When the clip of Sean Diddy Combs inside Fort Dix first went online, it spread faster than nearly any prison leak in recent memory. Within 24 hours, millions had watched, shared, slowed, and dissected every frame as if it were an unexpected movie trailer. At first glance, the scene appeared simple: Diddy, in khaki prison clothing, walking calmly through the chapel's media library. A man seemingly accepting his fate, reading, working, offering a faint smile before disappearing down a long corridor. But for those who have lived in federal prisons, the video told a far deeper story. What the public interpreted as peace was actually visible exhaustion. Freeze any frame and the details emerge: an untrimmed gray beard weighing down his jaw, not a fashion choice, but the result of months in a place where mirrors are scarce and barbers' schedules are backlogged. His slightly hunched posture, shoulders drawn inward, arms hanging loosely, not from surrender, but from constant pressure and vigilance. In prison, even posture becomes strategy. Every movement, the subtle nod, the half-smile, the brief glance toward the camera before exiting, was calculation, not comfort. A former Fort Dix inmate explained simply: you learn to perform calm. You smile. You act normal. If you look scared or angry, someone will test you. That smile? That's survival mode. That fleeting grin, the one that made headlines, was not joy. It was habit, a reflex honed during decades in the public eye, now repurposed as armor. The footage also revealed more subtle cues. As Diddy exits the chapel, his hands are tucked tightly into his sleeves. Experienced inmates recognized it immediately, a move known as the fold. A subconscious method to hide vulnerability, suppress shaking, or appear smaller and less threatening. In a place where even eye contact can trigger conflict, every gesture carries weight. Then there's his pace. Slow. Controlled. Deliberate. The gait of someone who has learned to measure each step. Move too quickly, and you draw attention. Too slowly, and you seem weak. Survival requires rhythm. When another inmate passes with a black cart, there's a brief, silent interaction, no words, no handshakes, no direct eye contact. Outside, it appears mundane. Inside, it's a coded form of communication. Even the chapel library itself tells a story. One of the few spaces in Fort Dix where inmates can move semi-freely, it's often called the calm room. Religious texts sit beside battered paperbacks and old CDs. The air conditioning sometimes works. Surveillance is lighter than elsewhere. That's why the leak caused such concern as someone, staff or inmate, risked deliberately smuggling it out. The leak sent a message: look at him now. Observe what power looks like when the spotlight disappears. Online reactions were immediate and divided. Some fans flooded social media with sympathy. He looks peaceful, one wrote. He's finding himself. Others, familiar with prison life, rejected that interpretation. That's not peace. That's survival mode. Podcasts dissected the clip frame by frame. Legal analysts debated the ethics of sharing it. Diddy's publicist issued a statement calling it a private moment that should never have been released. But the damage was done. The clip turned Diddy's incarceration into more than a legal story. It became a cultural event, an unintended documentary capturing a man learning to exist without the privileges that once defined him. The consequences inside were tangible. Surveillance increased. Guards watched him more closely. Other inmates grew wary, avoiding association that might attract attention. For someone who spent decades in front of cameras, the irony was cruel. Now, the camera made him vulnerable. As one correctional officer reportedly said off record, when you've been famous your whole life, anonymity feels like punishment. But in here, fame can get you killed. That is what the footage truly revealed. Not acceptance. Not comfort. But the quiet unraveling of a man who no longer knew where performance ended and survival began. The exhaustion was not just physical, it was emotional erosion. The smile wasn't warmth, it was strategy. The silence wasn't peace, it was fear wearing a calm mask. It's the image of someone stripped of illusion, living day by day in a system designed to erase identity, even someone as massive as Diddy. The longer he remains inside, the more the system asserts dominance. In places like Fort Dix, it isn't the walls that destroy you. It's the waiting. The silence between footsteps. The smile you force yourself to wear until it begins to feel real. From Music Mobile to inmate 639-28054, Sean Diddy Combs has learned true powerlessness. The man who built empires, filled stadiums, and shaped culture now spends days in oversized uniforms, obeying orders from people indifferent to who he once was. This fall doesn't just erase wealth or status, it dismantles identity. For decades, Diddy controlled every move, every headline, every frame. Inside the Bureau of Prisons, control ceases to exist. There's no entourage. No publicist. No music loud enough to drown out the noise. Worth is measured by silence, compliance, and the ability to disappear. Judges have called MDC Brooklyn barbaric. Lawyers have called it lawless. Those who survived inside call it exactly what it is: hell. A place that punishes beyond the sentence, grinding people down. Perhaps that is what the leaked footage revealed. Not scandal. Not spectacle. But a rare, unfiltered glimpse of a man stripped of everything except himself. No stage lights. No luxury. Just a name, a number, and a routine. The silence of those corridors speaks louder than any headline. It shows what happens when power fades, fame dissolves, and masks fall. What remains is not Sean Combs the mogul, not the icon, but a man fighting to survive a system he once thought he could outrun. For Diddy, the battle is no longer for freedom, it is for the self. Every day, he struggles between who he was and who he is being forced to become. And with each passing day, that line grows thinner. This is the true cost of power, not losing what you own, but losing who you are when there is nothing left to own. And one question remains: if this footage was leaked, who leaked it? And what else is hidden inside MDC? Because if this is what the public was allowed to see, imagine what remains unseen. Ultimately, it wasn't the sentence that broke him. It was the system that built him up and then swallowed him whole. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video to support the channel. Subscribe to Holly Hype TV for the latest updates, and turn on notifications to never miss an upload. Until next time, peace.